Hey everyone, welcome back to Football Frenzy. I'm Zoe Alter here with Alex Watts as always. Alex, let's jump right into it. You told me this was going to happen, and I said no. I said there was no way, but it has happened. Carson Wentz has been benched for Jalen Hurts. What's your take on this?
I'm not surprised because Carson Wentz is trash. So, you know what? I'm not surprised. And yeah,
I mean,
I knew it was coming sooner or
yeah,
later.
if you look at his stats, he does lead the league in QB takeaways. I just didn't think that the Eagles had it in them to actually bench him, but here we are. It's for
Honestly,
me, I guess it came down to the money in a way. I mean, basically, they're paying over $100 million for a backup QB. That's what this comes down to.
I'm I mean it's kind of like the Nick Foles situation in what was it? In Chicago, where he was getting paid a crap ton of money. Um so I think it's just funny because, we've all known for a while that Carson Wentz hasn't been the same since his almost MVP year where he won a Super Bowl, or Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. But I'm honestly not surprised.
Yeah. Honestly, I guess I should have been like I was less surprised than I thought I was gonna be, just because I also really like Jalen Hurts and I wanted to see him play. I just thought that I don't know, the Eagles, I guess because they're not in contention, they can do this. I just again I think it was like a pride thing, a money thing. I don't know what I could get past it, but I didn't see it happening. But excited to see what Jalen Hurts can do, honestly. I think he's
Hmm.
kind of a stud.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
I agree.
we can talk. Oh, unless you have something to say about that, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say I agree. He had a really good year in college. He almost won the Heisman, so
Yeah.
maybe he'll turn things around for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's capable, so he just has to put it into play. This week versus the Saints might be a little tough just because the Saints have been surging, but we'll see how that goes for him. But moving on, just talk a little bit about your Ravens as always. Des Bryant. Des Bryant came back, was gonna be all humble about everything. He got COVID, said he was quitting for the season, and then went back on his decision and is now apparently returning when he gets rid of COVID.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm not so worried about that because I know he was gonna say something stupid like that because he's a drama queen. But honestly, I'm more worried that this is going to start another outbreak on the Ravens. Unless this is part of the other outbreak, I'm worried that it's going to start an
Yeah.
outbreak on the Ravens, another one. And I'm just very worried about that because, the Ravens were already without, Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and J.K. Dobbins and Calais Campbell. And now they're still out with 4 players on the COVID list. So now with Des Bryant having COVID, being in close contact with everybody on both sides, I'm really worried.
I mean, if I had to guess, I would say I would think it's from the other outbreak, but obviously I don't know. I'm not sure. But also the thing is that obviously not everyone's sure about what COVID is and everything. They're finding more out about it every day. But I think
Mhm.
once you get it, there's a less likely chance. I'm not even sure if you can get it again. So I think guys who already had it, you've had some of your bigger name guys get it. You've had Lamar get it. So I think if anything, obviously it's not good that Des has COVID, but Lamar's already had it. So I think he's going to be fine. I think you're going to see a lot more Lamar. And honestly, as long as Dez didn't give it to anyone else and hopefully just got it from someone and didn't spread it, I don't think it matters too much because he's not really a factor.
Mhm. Well, honestly, I was talking about this with my brother last night when we find out the news that he has COVID. Honestly, I wouldn't be so surprised if Jerry Jones paid somebody to give him a negative test. I mean, a positive test. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised because he's a terrible person. Jerry Jones is an awful person, and you know he was being tested negative all week, like negative, 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 and then on game day, as he was practicing on the field, he gets a positive test. So I don't know what to think. I'm I'm a little sus about it. Like it's still a COVID test. It's
Yeah.
still a positive COVID test, but I'm a little sus about it, because
Honestly,
Jerry
if
Jones is a terrible person.
yeah, no, I know he's a terrible person. Believe me, I agree with you there, Cowboys and everything. But the one thing that I didn't love, obviously, I know you wanted to see the Ravens play and everyone wanted to see the game happen, but if you have a player on the field who has been exposed to everyone and who has exposed everyone, why did the NFL let that game happen? They should have put everyone, taken them back for tests. And I know they postponed it and messed the whole schedule again, but the thing is that it was just irresponsible if you look at it, Roger Goodell of the committee of the entire league for the NFL to let that game happen when you know people have been exposed. I even thought that letting the game happen before versus the Steelers was irresponsible just because of everything going on. And obviously the Broncos, like, remember, they had to play without a quarterback last week because of COVID tests, and the NFL didn't move that. They just moved it for the Ravens. So I felt like this not only like was that biased, but I thought this was just really irresponsible because I get that you found out late and that's fine. But if you know Des Bryant has been around other guys, which he has, he's been around that whole offense, all those wide receivers, everyone there. And I get the guys are ready to go and they want to play. But why do you let them play and spread the virus to everyone else if you're trying to limit exposure, right? That's the main thing with Corona. And obviously you haven't limited the exposure if Des has it. So my confusion was like, I don't know if it was confusion as much as it just seemed irresponsible for the NFL to let the game happen.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was quite irresponsible, but it is what it is. It happened, so I don't know.
I mean, we'll start hearing, I think, more about those tests in a couple of days when they come out. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some outbreaks on both sides just because.
Oh boy, I don't want another outbreak. That'd be awful.
That's the thing. Like, if they had, I get that they didn't want to postpone because it changes everything for them and revenue wise and everything, but it was just irresponsible and it's going to affect the future for like the next 2 weeks. Like, what if a bunch of like Browns players get it now and it starts taking them all out, right? And then some Ravens who didn't get it, say some Ravens defenders who weren't out with it yet because it targeted the offense a lot, COVID, for some reason. Like the running backs and Lamar.
I mean, no, the defense got hit pretty hard. Brandon Williams got COVID. Calais Campbell got COVID. Matthew Judon got COVID. I mean, hopefully none of the secondary is going to get COVID because that'd be even. I mean, now that the Ravens are the deepest team at cornerback with Pierre Desir and Traymon Williams and a bunch of those guys and Jimmy Smith, but honestly, I am pretty worried and I don't know. I just don't want to have another outbreak.
No, none of us want to see it. Obviously, we want to see games played, but you have to be responsible, and that's my main thing, I guess. But if we go on to recaps, I just wanted to recap this one game. Probably the biggest game of the week. We've been saying it forever. The Steelers are overrated, and it was finally proved because they lost to Washington. Of all teams, they lost to Alex Smith and Washington.
I'm so happy about that. Oh my God. Like, you have no idea how much I hate the Steelers. I mean, you can see it coming from a mile away. The Ravens almost beat them with their practice squad, with Trace McSorley. They almost beat them with Trace McSorley. So I'm honestly not surprised.
I mean, honestly, I guess I was surprised because it was the Washington football team that beat them, but I did expect them to lose, if not sooner. Most of the games they've played have been easy wins that have been handed to them, or they've just squeaked out wins over teams that they really shouldn't, like the other teams that played a good game against them. And
with the refs, it was the refs.
The refs and a lot. That was the Titans game, but there were a lot of games
and the Ravens game.
But there were a lot of games where the Steelers just played down to other teams' levels, and it takes them a while to get started. It takes them a while to keep going. And in this one, you only put up 17 points against the Washington football team. I think that's your issue there if you look at it.
I mean, Chase Young was explaining how the Ravens exposed a lot of their problems with their, third string team. So honestly, I wasn't surprised that they were going to lose. But
but Chase
it's
Young,
just crazy.
Totally. That's the thing. I expected a loss, but the thing is that Trace, I'm thinking of,
Chase Young.
Yeah. But Chase Young, I was thinking of Trace McSorley. Chase Young can't beat them by himself. And that's not the way it goes. And I think that was why I was most confused, because I know Chase Young is a huge threat. But then if you look at the way Roethlisberger handled it, was awful. You and I were talking about this just a couple minutes ago before we started. The Pittsburgh in total had 21 rushing yards. And how many passes did Roethlisberger throw?
53.
Yeah. 53 passes. Is that really necessary? I get that Chase Young can bring the pressure and everything, but that means you need to work in other ways. You can't just use the same attack every time because obviously it's not working. And then if the Steelers pride themselves on their defense, right? You give up 23 to Washington, who the only guy they have is Scary Terry? Is that all you have? Like,
yeah.
That's it. That's
I mean, Alex Smith. Yeah, I mean, Alex Smith is 3-1.
Okay, but he's still Alex Smith. Let's just discuss that for a second. Like I know
Well,
he's got
yeah.
an injury and like whatever.
I mean, he played with a hole. He played with a hole in his leg. Do you see all that blood coming on onto his shoe?
I mean, I think the two players that the reason why I would watch the Washington offense is for two players, and that is Logan Thomas and, as I mentioned before, Terry McLaurin. And other than those two, I don't think there's anyone I would watch it for. And I get sometimes Alex Smith can play well, and that's great, but he's not the most reliable guy. Either he has a good game or he throws like 3 picks and coughs up the ball twice more on fumbles. Like
I
he's not,
mean,
I don't think he's your
no,
reliable guy.
I think it depends because I think his first game back, he really struggled. He played one game and then he started another game and he lost both of those. But now they're on a 3-game winning streak. They're like the Giants. Like honestly, I'm really surprised at how he's playing. But I don't know. I mean, it's just super crazy how he's been playing so well. He's beaten so many good teams, and now he just ends up beating the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers. And honestly, I'm really happy for him.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
am too. I think it was a really good recovery, and I'm not taking anything away from him or his journey or what he's doing. And believe me, no one was happier, other than maybe you, that the Steelers lost. But I was thrilled that the Steelers lost. Believe me, it was gratifying to see a team that pretty much even Steelers fans, they won't admit it, but pretty much everyone knows that the Steelers should not be undefeated up to this point, and now of course they're not. But they shouldn't have
Mhm.
been undefeated, and they got handed a lot of victories. And Steelers fans can deny that all they want, but everyone who watches football knows that. If you
You
look at
know,
if you look at what they've won by, they've played down to every single team they've played, or they've just been handed the game by the NFL. It's really not that complicated.
mhm. Honestly, I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna say it now. They're gonna be the Ravens. Like they're gonna be last year's Ravens. They're gonna they're gonna get the first round bye. They're gonna play divisional, and then they're gonna lose to like the Titans. Honestly, I'd be kind of happy if the Titans beat them, because
Oh no, same. Derrick Henry, have him
yeah,
go.
Derrick Henry. Yeah,
AJ Brown. Oh no, would support them
I
any day.
want I want to see Derrick Henry embarrass T.J. Watt. Like it's like an empty. They're like an empty team. Like the Steelers are just not that good. They have a really good defensive line, but that's it. Their secondary is trash. If you give up 296 yards to Alex Smith, and they only had 43 rushing yards in total, but if you give up 296 yards to Alex Smith, then clearly your secondary is having problems.
Just I don't know what's going on with them, but I think even if you look at the beginning of the year, there was a reason why even when people make like preseason predictions, right? When like all these analysts do it and everything. Obviously sometimes you have like the dark horses and everything, but there was a reason why the Steelers weren't supposed to do this well. The only reason they were
Mhm.
supposed to do well was because of their schedule. But there was a reason because if you look at their team top to bottom, it's really not that impressive. I get there's a couple names here and there, and they have a good starting lineup. But if you look at the depth, if anyone goes down, this is what's happening. The team's crumbling. It's all falling apart. And you end up relying on guys that then get hurt and you don't have. And that's the thing.
Like,
Ben Roethlisberger's 1,000. How do you rely on him? James Conner goes down. Benny Snell, that's great. He can run. Fantastic for him. But other than that, you don't really have much. You have Juju. Behind Juju, you don't have much there. It's
I mean, Chase Claypool.
yeah,
They have Chase Claypool, but
that's two receivers.
Juju, Juju he had 7 receptions for 28 yards last week.
He takes
And you
up
want to hear?
for the
Yeah,
coverage, which frees it up for Claypool. But who are you
yeah.
going to rely on if Juju goes down? When he went down, who do you rely on? Eric Ebron, who dropped the ball right to his
I
hand.
was I was about to say he's so bad. Eric Ebron is so bad.
I don't think you realize like the actual hatred I have for him. I don't know if I've ever hated someone more than I hate Eric Ebron. I don't know
Yeah,
why. So many games for the Lions that was just Eric Ebron, third and whatever. Just catch the ball and we can continue our drive and we can win the game. Matthew Stafford, he's known for like his fourth quarter comebacks and just throws it to Eric Ebron. Eventually they just stop throwing it to him because he can't do anything. He can't block. He can't catch. He's useless.
he's
And
so overrated. He's unbelievably overrated.
so overrated. And I was so angry when I saw him have success with the Colts. I really was because why couldn't he do that in Detroit? You have Butterfingers in Detroit, but as soon as you get to Indianapolis, you're like a magnet. I was just confused, but I'm glad to see him resorting back to his old ways with the Steelers. But
Yeah, I don't understand why they even signed him for that much money. Um, it's just I'm happy. I hate him too. I've grown a pretty big hatred for Eric Ebron too. So
Yeah.
we're in the same boat.
Oh yeah, we are. All right, let's leave the Steelers in the dust because that's what's happening to their season. So, starting off with predictions, the first one, this is kind of a weird one because we don't talk about the Giants too much, but I did want to touch on the Cardinals Giants game coming up this week, just because the Cardinals, we've raved about them and we've raved about Kyler, but they're on a 3-game losing streak. They're 1-4 in their last 5 games, and the Giants are on a 3-game win streak without Daniel Jones or Saquon. So I think
Mm,
this could be an interesting one to look at because the Giants, the past couple weeks, for some reason, actually have been playing well, even with a backup QB. I almost just said backup because in my head, Daniel Jones is still the backup to Eli Manning. But a guy who Daniel Jones sometimes plays like a backup. So therefore, that makes this guy a backup. What's his name? Colt McCoy or something?
yeah, it's Colt McCoy. He's a solid quarterback. I mean, he's a solid backup quarterback. But honestly, I'm concluding that the Giants have so much less pressure when they have Saquon Barkley because he's such a star and he's like supposed to like play so well. And I think that without the pressure of Saquon Barkley needing to get all the touches, needing to get all the receptions, I think they're playing so much more loose, and it's also creating opportunity for Wayne Gallman, who's a pretty good football player, 136 yards rushing, so clearly he's good. But honestly, I think without Saquon Barkley and the pressure of him being a superstar, which he's a really good football player, but he still put so much pressure on the Giants. It's like Odell Beckham. Like Eli Manning was expected to throw to Odell Beckham every single play, and now that like when Odell Beckham left, I mean obviously it hurt, but he was able to find people like Sterling Shepard and I don't remember what other receivers were on that team at the time, but he was able to loosen up, and they had a pretty good season.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think what was really important is that when a team comes in, the way you want to build your team, obviously you want it to be an even team. But if you're building a team from the bottom up, if you have to pick, you build your team off a quarterback, not a running back. And the Giants, their fault was they tried to build their team off of Saquon because when Eli Manning started to crumble, right? When Saquon was brought in, when the start of the Saquon era, it was okay, everything's Saquon now. We're building it around Saquon. But the thing is that no matter who you are, if your thighs are as big as Saquon, that is great. If you have large quads, that's fantastic. But you still get hurt. You're a running back. You take the
Mhm.
most hits out of anyone. In order to get you down, you get hit multiple times. And because of yards after contact, you take a lot more contact than almost any other player on the field, other than maybe a slot receiver or a tight end. But other than that, I
Mhm.
think you take almost the most contact on the field.
Yeah.
Hit really hard. And you have to expect that running backs are going to get injured. You can be Saquon, that's great. You can be almost indestructible, but you're not. And at the end of the day, QBs get hurt a lot less than running backs. And I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing for the Giants is that they've always built their team, or since Saquon, they've built their team around the running back. And sure, you can put Wayne Gallman in there, but even remember when Saquon, when he first got hurt, they put Wayne Gallman in, and that did not go well for them because they were still trying to do their running scheme. But now that they're actually focusing on Daniel Jones more before he got injured, you saw him running. You saw other
Mhm.
things coming into play that weren't just designed for the run. And they were designed
Yeah.
for Daniel Jones to run, but they weren't designed for Saquon to run. And I think that's
Daniel Jones.
really good for the Giants.
Yeah. Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. Like I don't understand. Like in the beginning of the season, he was shaky because he had Saquon and he was still having like ball control issues. But now he's really turning into a good quarterback. I think
He's
he'll
grown
be.
into his own.
Yeah, he's having. I think he's having a better season than last year, at least at this point. But I think that I honestly think that he's gonna end up being like a top 15 quarterback next year, like easily because he has Golden Tate, who's always reliable. You have
Love Golden.
yeah, you have Sterling Shepard. You have what's his name?
No,
Slayton,
yeah, Slade.
Darius Slayton,
I think of.
and yeah,
No,
and
have threats. I mean, not to mention you have Evan Ingram, who's great. You have
Butterfingers a little bit.
a little bit,
Minus
but
Butterfingers.
he still gets the job done when he's clutch.
He's clutch, but
Yeah.
he does have Butterfingers
Oh yeah.
a
Well,
little
in
bit.
normal games he does. But the thing for the Giants, I guess, moving forward, if they can work through the quarterback, Jalen Jones will be back soon. He's recovering from his injury. Sorry, Colt McCoy, you're going to be benched again soon. But if they can work their team and keep doing it where they work their team around Daniel Jones, I think Saquon's also going to have more success because teams have to not just focus on Saquon running every single play.
Yeah, true.
All right, let's hit on your Ravens because we had to do it. Finally coming back into the swing of things. You told me this was going to happen. Lamar's hitting his stride. The Ravens will be playing the Browns this week. What do you think?
You want to hear something really interesting?
Yeah.
The Ravens are undefeated in games where Lamar has thrown less than 20 times. They're 6-0. So that comes to show. Oh, and the point spread is like 24-25.
Okay.
So that just comes to show what happens when the Ravens can run. Like you saw last night, the Ravens ran 294 yards against the Cowboys, who have a terrible defense, but still 294 yards is a pretty crazy feat. So honestly, if the Ravens can get back to their old ways of last year, running down the throat football, then I think they'll end up winning out, going 11-5, making the playoffs. I think it's very possible.
It's definitely a possibility, especially versus a Browns team that, in my opinion, is very, very overrated. I know people are saying they're the real deal, and sure, they have been playing at a good level, but they're still overrated, and they get way more credit than they should, especially because of the games that they blow. Also, how are you not overrated when your QB is Baker Mayfield? I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, yeah.
One thing for the Ravens is that they don't really have to worry about the pass because they are last in the league in passing. So it's not like they're doing an excellent job there. So they do need to focus more on their rushing. And I don't really understand because their running back committee does not work, but somehow they're first in rushing in the league.
Well, I think their running committee, I think it's just a matter of, Mark Ingram getting less touches. I think they were trying to force it with Mark Ingram early in the year because he was that 1,000-yard rusher last year. But now that they're giving it to, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, who's, in my opinion, I think a top 2, top 3 rookie running back, I think now that they're doing that, they're really hitting the road and running, no pun intended, but I think they're really starting to hit their stride like they did last year because they're not forcing it anymore. They're giving Lamar Jackson, the offensive line played really well last year. Last night didn't give up any sacks. So if they really keep it at that, if they really start running the ball a lot more with, J.K. Dobbins, who's a great running back, reminds me of Ray Rice, except he doesn't beat his girlfriend, hopefully. But hopefully, 27 problem with beating girlfriends. But anyway, you saw it with Kareem Hunt. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited to see what the Ravens can do on the ground, and maybe Greg Roman can turn it around, not get fired at the end of the season.
Maybe. I mean, I think there are high hopes. There have been all season, and it's all been a little bit of a letdown. I know you've said this. Like the Ravens, we all just expected better from them. And if they can finally start to heat up because some of the pressure's off or just because Lamar's finally hitting his stride, he's gotten into what he's doing, I think they're going to be okay. And I think, I don't know why it started off so slow, but I think they're realizing that as you said this last week, that teams have figured out what the Ravens were doing because they didn't change anything coming into this year. They did the exact same thing. And now they're realizing they have to keep changing things. And because they're finally figuring out and changing things and the things they're changing are actually working, I think they're going to be fine. And obviously, you have to remember, this is a Ravens team that's really talented and knows what they're doing. They went to the playoffs last year. Sure, they may be young, but they also have some veterans on that team. And Lamar's an incredible leader. So if you have any team, don't count out the Ravens. I don't think anyone was, but if you were starting to, don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was happening earlier in the season, first of all, they started and they played easier teams. But I think the biggest problem is that they were trying to force it with Mark Ingram, and they were also getting away from what they're good at, which is running. They had they averaged 205 yards last season, which is like an all-time record, like NFL, AFL, any of that stuff. But so I think that if they really get back onto their run game, and the offensive line picks up, which is really good because from experience, moving around the offensive line has worked for the Ravens because in 2012, they made so many offensive line changes and they won the Super Bowl. So if they're putting in different people, different plays, the defense isn't going to know what to expect. So I think that if they can really utilize their tools and really trick defenses, then they can definitely go all the way. Maybe the AFC Championship, maybe even beat the Chiefs for once.
I mean, I don't know about beating the Chiefs, but I definitely think they could put a run in there. But if we're moving on
Mhm.
to fantasy, I wanted to start off. This week, this is a little heartbreaking for me just because I, just being stupid as I usually am, didn't focus on, like my fantasy. I'm just like, oh, I have the rest of the season. Like, obviously, I spend a lot of time on fantasy, but I was like, oh, I'll have my time to climb back up in the rankings because I had a couple weeks there where I had a little bit of an issue. Michael Thomas was out, he was my whole team. But
Mhm.
I missed the playoffs by one spot. And so I'm a little sad about it. So, we'll go into fantasy, but I just wanted to share that it's less meaningful. And I know for you
Yeah.
it's more meaningful because you're doing great, but it's fine. Going into it, Ty Johnson. This may sound insane. I know, Jets, what the hell are you thinking, Zoe? But listen to it for a second. Ty Johnson has become the running back one in New York. And
Well,
that's, you can say
well, I
Frank Gore is, but he's not. What were you saying?
I was gonna say I chose Frank Gore, so clearly a New York running back isn't so crazy.
I mean,
Unless we're just both crazy.
but Frank Gore versus Ty Johnson is different because Frank Gore is a future Hall of Famer.
Hmm.
So, it depends because he has the potential. But I do see the potential in Ty Johnson too. Just because of the Jets last week, did not play awful. They almost won that game, if not for the Raiders saving themselves at the very end. And the Raiders have not been playing great, but it's not like the Raiders are an awful team because they're not. They're a team that's they beat the Chiefs this year. They've beaten some really good teams. And the Jets were
Hmm.
able to hold up with them. They were able to hold up with Gruden's team and everything going on. And then also, if you look at the matchup for this week, Ty Johnson's playing the Seahawks. And may I remind you how the Seahawks played last week? I don't even think you need to talk about that. That's a complete
Hmm.
mess. And everything's going to be a frenzy because it's Jamal Adams' return to New York. So it's all going to be a mess. So
Hmm.
I think Ty Johnson's a good pickup for this week because the Jets, if there's one thing they can do, if Darnold throws the ball, he'll throw an interception. If he just hands it off to Ty Johnson and let him do his work, and the Seahawks are so depleted, I don't even know what's going on with them anymore. Pete Carroll's team is falling apart. His defense sucks. So Ty Johnson, why not, right?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty good. I'm actually about to pick him up right now. That's what I was doing on my phone.
I'm
But
just
honest, I mean honestly, I'm gonna do T.Y. Hilton this week because he's been warming. He's had a pretty big struggle for like the first few weeks, and so I think that he had his first 100-yard game last season. He had like what 23, 24 fantasy points, and he's not that high rostered. So I think if you could snag him, he'd be a good flex, or maybe sit him on the bench for a week and then wait till to see if he does well this week. If he does well this week against the Raiders defense, who you know aren't doing so good. They,
the way to put it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but you know, I think if you sit him on the bench or put him at flex, then he'll prove that he's a wide receiver too. At least a wide receiver too.
Thing with T.Y. Hilton is he has a low floor, but he does have a high ceiling, and he has the potential to catch a bunch just because he is T.Y. Hilton and he's been such a substantial receiver in this league for so long. And obviously, he has the potential. So if the team around him plays well and Phil Rivers can play well, I think you're fine. So I think that could be a really
Mhm.
good pickup. I just think you have to be wary of the fact that he could not do so well, but he could also put up like 25 points on the day.
True.
If we go into red zone, I don't even want to, this just has not been a good week for me. Okay. It just has not been a good week because I got swept by Alex in red zone this week.
Oh yeah. What is it, like the second time, third time I've swept you?
I swept you. Yes, but I've swept you a bunch this season too. Thank you.
You
You know,
swept me once.
no, I've swept you twice, I thought.
Mm, I don't think so. I think you swept me once.
Okay, we'll see at the end of the season when everything totals up. Okay. All right. Starting off, Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. Obviously, we talked about this a little bit. I didn't see this coming. I explained my reasoning. You picked yes. I picked no. You got the point for that. Next one, Khalil Mack. Did he have over or under 2 sacks versus the Lions? Classic not believing in the Lions. I said over. Khalil Mack had under. And you had mentioned this because he'd been in the slump. But
0 sacks.
even though he didn't have sacks, he was a huge factor in that game. And he was a huge factor for the
Mm.
I know he didn't have sacks, but believe me, his presence was seen, especially for someone who was watching on the line and who screams, every time someone comes up behind your quarterback and you're like, watch your back. Like my dad, watch your back, Matt, watch your back. Like Khalil Mack was always that guy. He was chasing down Matt Stafford. He was causing, commotion in the middle of the field. And he may have not had the stats to show for it, but he definitely did affect the course of the game. Just unfortunately, I couldn't get the point for it because he didn't actually get the sack. Mm-hmm. And then the last one was who has more rushing yards, Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry? I said Derrick Henry because, I love the guy. You picked Nick Chubb. You were right. I probably should have picked Nick Chubb because he does usually get more yardage, but you stuck with that one. So 3 for 3. Nice week for you.
Yeah. It's a clean sweep. Give me the broom.
Oh, God. So moving on to this week, Alex is sticking with his Jalen Hurts questions. Does Jalen Hurts throw for over or under 2 touchdowns in his first start?
I'm just going to say over because I don't know. I feel like Jalen Hurts, he played a quarter and he had 100 yards and a touchdown. So maybe, who knows? Maybe he'll play really well.
Didn't he also have a pick?
Yeah, but still, he could still throw for over 2 touchdowns.
Okay, that's true. That's true. Who are they playing again? The Saints, I think?
I don't know. I think they're playing the Saints. Yeah, they're playing the Saints.
They're playing the Saints? Okay. Because they're playing the Saints, I think I'm going to go with under just because it is the Eagles, and I really like Jalen Hurts, but in terms of throwing, just the Eagles have struggled with their production this year has been a huge thing. And also, we saw Jalen Hurts throw a pick as well, so you don't know what could happen. The Saints, for some reason, will go on these sprees where they get a ridiculous amount of they force turnovers. And I think if anyone's going to get the ball taken away from them, it's going to be the Eagles. And unfortunately, Jalen Hurts is just going to be at the top of that totem pole because he is the quarterback now. And also, he's adjusting to the offense still. He's played a little bit. He's been thrown in and out, but he hasn't really gotten that official start where he goes in and the whole game is his to do whatever he wants with it. So I think it's going to come down to him getting comfortable. You mentioned Ertz is back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a huge thing. Ertz and Goddard, obviously, 2 huge guys there. But I'm just going to say under because I don't know if he's at that level yet where he's prepared enough to throw 2 touchdowns versus Saints team that's been really good.
True. Well, also don't forget Richard Rodgers, the Hail Mary master.
Yeah. Next question. We talked about Alex Smith. Continuing that. Does Alex Smith throw for over or under 3 touchdowns against his former team, the 49ers?
You know what? Even though I made this question, I'm gonna say under because he hasn't had a 3 touchdown game, if I could speak. So I'm going to say under because that's just not the thing he does. He's not a big touchdowns guy. He gets things done, short yardage, and then lets his running backs run it in. So I'm going to say under.
I mean, you just couldn't get the words out. Alex was stuttering because the idea of Alex Smith throwing 3 touchdowns is just uncomprehendable. I have to say under too. I don't think there's a way it happens, unfortunately. Sorry, Alex Smith. I do like your receivers. I mentioned Terry. I mentioned Logan Thomas. I loved both of them. But I don't know if it's going to happen for you. I think, again, not like the 49ers have been fantastic. They haven't been. But I think the run game is going to be a huge piece of this game. It's going to be, little passes to the side that Alex Smith is going to have to dish out. And I just couldn't see him throwing 3 touchdowns. I don't know. I feel like his arm would fall off before he could do that. So, All right. Last question. Who has more rushing yards, the Ravens or the Browns? Remember, these are the first and second teams in the league in rushing.
Honestly, I'm not sure. You know what? I'll let you answer first because I still need to think about it a little bit.
All right. So the thing is that I think it could go either way too. So I'm trying to decide. I'm deciding between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt versus a Ravens defense that has their people back. And so that's kind of where I am because I think it just depends. It's not even the Ravens offense. It's not the Ravens running game versus the Browns running game anymore. It's just the Ravens defense versus the Browns running game because I mean, I know the Ravens are doing great in rushing, but I just don't believe in that. I don't know, their running game. So for that reason, I think I'm going to go Browns just because the Browns are going to have to use their rushing game and they are going to have to turn to their passing a lot. But Baker Mayfield himself is not going to win the game. I think we know that. And I'm still, if I had to pick like odds, I would take the Ravens any day. But I still think that Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb could have themselves a little bit of a day here.
You know, honestly, I'm going to go the opposite because, number one, they're coming off a 294 rushing yard game, so they have a lot of momentum. Number two, the last time they played, which is week 1, the the Ravens had 111 yards, and then the Steelers had a little. I mean, not the Steelers. The Browns had a little over 130. I think it's going to change because in that game, Lamar had 275 passing yards, and he was passing a lot more. So I'm going to say the Ravens because in week 1, Lamar Jackson threw for 275 yards, and they rushed less than the Browns. So I'm going to say it's the opposite because the Ravens are going back to rushing game.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I think that could totally be a toss-up that could
You
go
got that?
either way for us. But that's about all the time we have for today. That wraps it up. We'll see. I'm really, really hoping you don't sweep me again. Don't know if my ego could take another week of that. So we'll see how that goes. But
That'd be bad.
here with Alex Watts, we'll see you next Wednesday.